Welcome everyone to a new episode of IMPAKT TV. My name is Michelle and I'm here with Friso, and we are your hosts for tonight. We are also part of the editorial board of IMPAKT TV. And for those who visit us for the first time, we are live streaming now from Utrecht in the Netherlands, from IMPAKT, Center for Media Culture. And IMPAKT is an organization working in contemporary media, art and culture. And we focus on the relationship between society, technology and the arts. And the whole year round we organize exhibitions, events like this online, but also on site. A residency program and a yearly festival each year in November. And every month we host IMPAKT TV. So it's a series on online events in which we look at news and trends and reflect on those together with a special guest. Tonight we have a very special guest, I have to say. And this is a third episode, just to give an idea of where it can go. The first one this year was with artist Rafael Roosendaal. He's active in the NFT scene. And then we had one episode with Guido van der Werve about his film works. And now with the legendary Don Letts. Before I give the word to Friso for a short introduction of our guest, I just want to remind you that during the episode we take questions, so please ask them, don't be shy. There is a chat function under the live stream screen where you can just type in the chat, or you can send us an email at questions@impact.nl, and we keep an eye on those and look forward asking them on your behalf to Don Letts. Without further ado, let's introduce our guest.
Don Letts. Don Letts, there's various ways to actually introduce him. We can take half an hour to introduce all the work that he's been doing over the last decades. But let's suffice for now by saying that Don Letts is a filmmaker, a musician, a DJ, a broadcaster for, if I counted well, more than 20 years, having his show Culture Clash at BBC 6, a social commentator, and, well, there's much more to him. In 2018, and I think this is something to say as a kind of introduction to the man, he was given an honorary doctorate for his contribution to British culture at West London University, and where in a lot of times such an honorary doctorate is like an official stamp on somebody's career saying, well, that was all very beautiful. Not in Don Letts' case, because ever since 2018, he's been DJing worldwide. He's been continuing with his radio show. And actually, a few of the direct reasons for Don Letts being with us today is that his biographic movie, Rebel Dread, is out in cinemas across the world, also available online. There's a new autobiography, There and Black Again, that I could just show for those people at home. Yes, there's the camera. And for those people that are actually digging into music, Don Letts' latest compilation for Late Night Tales, Virgin Excursion, I think came out last year or the year before, and it has been on heavy rotation at my place. With Don Letts, as it says in the announcement, we will be discussing why moments of civil unrest are pivotal for cultural life. We'll talk about the power of music and the ever-new shapes of political struggle. We'll also might be asking Don a few questions of what is actually inspiring to him in contemporary art at the moment. Art, culture, if you take it a little bit broader. So perhaps it's good to say that we'll have 1 hour and try to have an aesthetic approach to putting Don Letts in his time. If we were a live event, I would now say, ladies and gentlemen, give it up to Don Letts, who will now be appearing on screen. Hi there, Don.
Welcome.
How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. And thanks for the airtime.
Well, thanks for being with us. As we were saying, let's try starting somewhere at the origins. Perhaps for a few of those people that are less familiar with your biography, it's good to maybe touch on how you were a figure in the scene in London when punk and reggae met, being the guy owning Acme, a shop where a lot of people were frequenting that were later on becoming influential in various music scenes in London, and then being asked to be a DJ at the Roxy, where the then exploding punk scene was listening to you DJing heavy dub sets. How did this come about? And maybe you can paint us a small picture of what London looked like when all this was happening. We might have some younger viewers.
Okay, we're talking about the late 70s, 75, 76, 77. A period of social decline economically, politically, and it was interesting because I had a soundtrack to ease my pain. I had a reggae, but my white friends were not so lucky. The popular music of the time was a million miles away from the feeling on the street. So they set about creating a soundtrack that was of the people, for the people, by the people, punk rock. And they had this music, they had an attitude, they had a look, but they had no place to play because punk was getting a lot of negative coverage from the press. So there was no live venues. Anyway, a friend of mine opened the very first live venue in London, the Roxy. And he asked me to DJ there. And because as you rightly pointed out, shop Acme Attractions on the Kings Road, Chelsea. And in this shop, I was selling retro clothing and playing like hardcore dub reggae. And this seemed to attract a lot of really interesting people into the shop, including the likes of Patti Smith. But we'll get to that later. Anyway, there's a scene, a soundtrack, but these kids have got no place to play. Andrew Tchaikovsky opens the Roxy and asks me to DJ there. And it's so early in the punk movement, there are no UK punk records to play. So I play what I'm into. I'm playing hardcore dub reggae. Lucky for me, the punks loved it. I guess they loved the obvious anti-establishment vibe of the music. They liked the fact that the lyrics had a kind of musical reportage quality. They were talking about stuff that you could relate to. They obviously liked the bass lines, as typified by bands like The Clash and The Slits, and later on Public Image. And it has to be said, they liked the weed as well. So there was some serious cultural exchange going on at the Roxy. And what I got from the punk rockers was this whole D.I.Y. thing, which is it's D.I.Y., do it yourself, which I actually think is punk rock's greatest gift, because it was with their inspiration that I picked up a movie camera and reinvented myself as Don Letts the filmmaker.
And then,
how did that start? Can you tell us about the first clip that when is the first time that you took this camera to the Roxy?
Well, I'll tell you how it started initially. Is that in the early 70s, I saw a film called A Harder They Come, Jamaica's most famous film. And you've got to understand, I'm what you call black British, right? Which kind of rolls off the tongue now. But back in the late 60s, early 70s, it was a very confusing concept. But we had a soundtrack. We had reggae. But there was no visual accompaniment until Bob Marley came along and this film, A Harder They Come, Jamaica's most famous film. And I remember being struck by the power of cinema to entertain, inform, and inspire. And I kind of thought to myself, I wouldn't mind being a filmmaker myself. But in the early 70s, for a young black man, this was a ridiculous idea. It was an old white boys network. Fast forward 5 or 6 years, punk rock explodes with the D.I.Y. ethos. My white friends are picking up guitars, and such was the energy that I wanted to pick up something too. So I picked up a movie camera and literally reinvented myself as Don Letts the filmmaker and started literally just filming the bands that I liked. As simple as that.
And then I think an important aspect of what you were saying is there was a lot of bad press on the exploding punk scene. And a lot of the clips that you were doing were not falling for the traps of actually portraying just the people in their clothing, just with the safety pins at various places in their clothing and their head, but just showing what it was like for a disadvantaged youth to finally find a spot for themselves in British society.
Well, it's funny. With hindsight, you're putting a lot of thought into it. But at the time, I was just filming the shit that was turning me on. And to be honest, I guess I had good taste. I'm filming the Clash, I'm filming the Pistols, the Slits, X-Ray Specs, Buzzcocks, bands like this. And I'll tell you what's really funny is this. So I'm filming these bands that I like, and then one day I read in the New Musical Express, a famous music paper back then, it said Don Letts is making a punk rock film. And I thought, damn, that's a good idea.
I am, actually.
Yeah, and I literally stuck this shit together, and that became my first film, the punk rock movie.
Which was then also touring England and perhaps introducing people in other places to what punk was like?
Well, to be honest with you, what happened with that film was it came out at the same time as Malcolm McLaren's Rock and Roll Swindle, and Malcolm put an injunction against my film. So it didn't really get around the world except in bootleg form. But by that time, I'd become friends with the likes of the Clash and the Pistols and the Slits, and I'd moved on into making music videos. You know, my first music video was for Public Image, their first single, and then my second one was for the Clash, London Calling, and then I just went on and kept making videos. I've probably made about 350 videos to date.
Oh, you're being modest. I just read that it's more than 400, actually.
Yeah, press are lazy. They like to round things up.
Yeah, okay. So then let's make it at 361 clips. And then that was a happy occasion because this was also the time when actually television stations were showing video clips. I think it perhaps was a bit too early for MTV and the likes, but there was not a video clip culture before.
Not yet. That's right. I mean, MTV came out in the early 80s, right? Yeah.
So then you might say these are coincidences that you happened to be there when the punk was exploding and you were knowing all the people, and then it was coincidence again that video clips were emerging? No?
Not coincidence. It's my choice. I chose to be in those places. I mean, you got to understand, they called me the Rebel Dread because I wasn't like the rest of the brothers. If I liked something, I was going to go and check it out. The first live band I ever saw was The Who. I saw them when I was 14 years old, man. And from that moment, I just knew I wanted to be part of this world. Not necessarily in a band, not necessarily a singer. They opened a door, and I stepped through that door, and I've kept walking ever since. And me gravitating towards punk rock was not chance. I mean, I was interested in what they were doing, what they were saying, and the sound. And I stepped boldly into that culture.
And then you say this is a choice, and I think that also in the announcement for the movie Rebel Dread, it says, it's a quote by you, "Everything I am comes from music."
Yep.
And there must have been music before the punk rock. You said you were visiting The Who while being 14, but there must have been different music at your parents' place when you were still a young kid?
That's really simple. I mean, obviously, I'm of Jamaican heritage. So at home, there's reggae coming in this ear. But at school, I'm listening to what my white friends are listening to. So in this ear, it's the Beatles, it's the Kinks, it's the Stones, it's the Who. And my taste is a reflection of the duality of my existence, which is black and British. And I decided at a very early age that I was not going to be defined by my colour. If something spoke to me, I was going to put my hand up and say, yes, I like that Led Zeppelin riff. Even when the brothers are like, Don Letts, you're crazy. But that's why they call me the Rebel Dread, man.
Alrighty, so perhaps now might be a good moment to just see a very short part of the trailer to Rebel Dread.
Cool.
I think it's ready.
Cool.
Yeah.
Punk rock's a living thing. It's about turning problems into assets.
Yeah.
And as a first-generation British-born black, that's something I know a lot about.
That was the thing about the racial climate in Britain. It was pretty on fire when it came to dealing with the authorities, like the police and stuff like that.
And for us, being the generation born and raised here, it wasn't about trying to fit in. We had a different fight.
So the Roxy Club is this punk club, and Don was going to be the DJ.
One day he just announced, I'm going to get a camera. And from that moment, he was filming practically every band that played there.
Don saw it. He was ahead. Now, he saw what they were into, their attitude and what they were trying to say. Now he was involved in this new movement that was happening.
The thing about Don was that he was always on a mission to achieve something. And that was the vehicle.
Portraying a little bit of what London was like in the mid-70s. You were saying these were dark times, and I think there's a lot of people that would be saying that our contemporary days are rather dark times too, where there's...
Yeah, where's the punk rock today? Yeah, exactly. I mean, punk rock was a product of the social climate of the time, as most good music is. And, you know, you might wonder where it is in the 21st century, because the social conditions that informed punk rock are worse now, to be quite honest, and they're getting worse. And I tell you, punk rock will see you through all this shit. And I'm not talking about guitars and mohawks. I'm talking about an attitude and a spirit.
Yeah, I was actually listening an interview recently, and you asked actually a very interesting question. How do you rebel when your parents already rebelled? So it's so which political struggles are for your like children? What are now the most political social struggles, and how do you do that then?
Well, what you're talking about is, I was actually making a joke about young people, you know, because my generation, you know, hair, fashion and music, drugs, tattoos, I mean, you know, we've covered it. So it's really hard for young people to find their own space.
Yeah.
Having said that, you know, for most young people, history is like last week. So the future is fertile ground.
Yeah. So you think it's more in the future visions that the rebelliousness can happen?
Oh, listen, man, if you look around at the social conditions in the 21st century, there's plenty to rebel about. I mean, I can't speak about the Netherlands. I don't live there. But in the UK, there's all kinds of liberties been taken with the people. Some very obvious ones now, but they've been eroding people's, for God knows how long. And only now the people are beginning to, in the winter, are we going to be able to eat or heat our homes? And I tell you what's surprising to me is the complacency of the British people, that they've allowed all these things to happen.
Yeah.
Typified by something like Brexit. But I'm jumping the gun.
Yeah, and on the one hand, you can almost think it's maybe because on the one hand there is there's a catastrophe around us, and on the other hand we do have a lot. I mean, I was thinking also when you were saying like there was no visuals to the music. Now with our phones we are all documenting and making visuals about anything we see around us. Like there is almost a plentiness.
Well, let me clarify. We're either documenting or being distracted.
Where is the difference, you think?
Big difference.
Yeah, but where is the difference?
One's about feeding your ego, one's about being culturally involved with what's going on in the planet. You know, I think we've been thrown a bit of a curved ball by the digital age. And it's a beautiful thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have no problem with technology. The problem is people. Technology is great, people are stupid. You've only got to look what's on Facebook and Twitter at any given time in the West to see that it's kind of brought out the worst in people. Having said that, in the rest of the world, these are life-saving devices. So technology isn't the problem, it's people, man. Technology is great, people are shit.
So then perhaps let us get back to this little explosion of people in late 70s London that were doing away with the slogan "No Future" and creating a future for themselves.
Yeah.
Now, perhaps you might say that there is no future for our climate, for our planet, with climate coming on, right? So you might say that no future would apply as much to our times as it did to the dire situation in London, late 70s.
Yeah.
And I'm
But
going
when
to...
John made that statement, it wasn't meant to be a defeatist statement.
No.
What he was saying is, there's no future if you don't do something about it. Like I said, it wasn't a defeated, it was a call to arms.
Yeah.
Saying, look, if you don't do something, there will be no future. So get off your ass and get involved. You know.
So now you have first-hand experience how actually a counterculture exploded on the scene, became very big, perhaps also with the wrong connotations, because perhaps we might quote you, media is not stupid, but a lot of people in media are stupid. How to actually...
I mean, the media has constantly, throughout the ages, tried to sort of demonize the youth. It's been a constant pattern. You know, you look in the UK, again, I can't speak out of the Netherlands, but from the minute the Teddy Boys emerged on the street, they had these kind of what you call urban folk devils to cast as the bad guys. And ever since then, they've been, you know, it was the mods, Teddy Boys, punk rockers, rave culture, and they just continuously demonize the youth. It's an old trick.
Yeah, and then, of course, there's a very famous song, You Can't Blame the Youth, but still it's happening all over again. And what is the difference between the do-it-yourself ethic that you first had experienced and a lot of people thinking, okay, I would love to change things, but I really don't know how, that we see all around us these days?
Whoa, that's a funny question because, you know, I believe a lot of the creativity that happened in the last half of the 20th century happened because of how little we had, not how much we had. There's an English proverb, maybe it's a global proverb, necessity is the mother of invention. Fast forward to the 21st century, and we have the means of expression and affordable technology all around us. So I'm not sure what the reason is that somebody can't express themselves unless they don't have a good idea in the first place. Mm. You know, I think if you have a good idea and the motivation, the good thing about today's affordable technology is you can do it. But you still need a good idea. I mean, just because, you know, you can afford it, don't mean you can do it. You need a good idea.
And maybe just a good idea is only the start, because you also need to have, as we would say in Dutch, the flying hours to master the thing that you'll be working with. Yeah. See
it through. But nowadays, again, because of this affordable, cheap technology, in my day, I had to go with a begging cap to get somebody to pay, to get money to be able to exercise my idea. You don't have to do that anymore. You know, the problem is, though, that it's opened a door to all these people that don't have great ideas. All they have is egos. And all they want to do is, you know, get famous and all this shit. And it's a big problem. Because it clogs up the airwaves. The air is, well, as you rightly pointed out about the environment, you know, you can pollute the air and the atmosphere with bad ideas as well, not just chemicals. Do you understand? And in the 21st century, space is really valuable. So ego is not enough of a reason to fucking occupy space. You know, things are too serious. It almost makes me think, you know, you should bring back some kind of censorship. I know that's an ugly word, but there's some people that just, you know, they're fulfilling, what is it, ego and makeup. And there's some people that really appreciate that, you know, this technology has given us a means to communicate with each other, engage with each other and be emotionally connected to the planet and get involved. You know, where others just want to get likes, you know, and they got lots of likes, but they got no personality.
So then let's get back to you and the punk rock movie, which was the first of a series of films that you would be directing afterwards, including Dancehall Queen and then the movie on The Clash, What's Way to the World. So in here, there must have been, as you stated yourself, an idea. Why would that next movie be your next movie? Was this also planned, or this was just something that came along and decided this is the one thing I'm going to do for my next, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? How does this happen?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever worked on anything for 3 or 4 years. I get bored really quickly. Secondly, I don't think I've ever had a plan in my life. In a weird way, I've led a kind of creatively hedonistic life, just gravitating towards things that turn me on, that I feel justify the space they occupy, and are not polluting the planet with bad ideas, as I just said. And somebody asked me what makes me want to do films. I think I gravitate towards ideas that express something about the way I feel. And I get my ideas out there through other people. There you go.
Yeah. And
it's funny, you asked me to explain something that I do intuitively. Don Letts has no master plan. I never have.
And still, you said just a bit earlier, it was a deliberate choice by yourself to actually make that step. To take up the camera was a choice by yourself. To be in a certain position was a choice by yourself.
Well, if that's a plan, I mean, I realized that I wanted to express myself visually, but I had no idea of where I was going. I just knew that this was a medium that spoke to me and I believe could speak to others.
Yeah.
All right.
Can you tell us maybe a little bit more about this power of this image to speak? How did that work, or how did that feel actually?
I guess like I said before, I'm as old as rock and roll, born in 1956, and when I was growing up, we only had two means of alternative information and inspiration. And that was music and style. So very quickly, the idea of imagery was embedded in our minds. And I think the English became masters of these two elements, and we turned them into art. That's why you had this rapid turnover of style-driven subcultures in the last half of the 20th century. So I think it was music, style, and movies. That was, I'm of that generation, that's all we had. And it spoke to me, and I guess, that combination of image and music are my weapons of choice. And that's the medium that I've moved in from the time I entered when I was 4, I am now, putting those two things together. They obviously complement each other beautifully. And everything I've ever done is somehow connected to music. Everything I am today has been created by music. I think people forget it has that power. It can change your mind, not just your sneakers.
And with music, we often associate it with a kind of a personal expression with someone. But when you are when you're actually documenting your music scene, how much is it like documenting what others are expressing, or is it? Do you want to tell something?
You see,
or is it both?
I answered that a while ago. Yeah, inherently, if I'm filming something, it's reflecting something inside of me. But it's funny. People say I'm a documentary historian, all this shit, and I don't think of myself like that. I'm just filming the shit that turns me on. It happens to be culturally interesting, and in the context of time, it has some longevity, and by default, I become a documentarian or a historian. But that's not my intention. I'm just gravitating towards the shit that turns me on, passing on the energy that made me who I am. Because you've got to understand, nothing comes out of a void. I didn't pop out of something, I was like, oh, I'm Don Letts. I saw something, it turned me on and made me want to take that energy and move forward. And that's what I'm trying to do really, is like pass it on. Yeah. Just pass it on.
What are the things that are turning you on now? What is happening in the scene at this moment?
Oh man, that's an open-ended question.
Very open-ended. Okay.
I'm still listening. For some people, music's a job or it's a hobby or some shit. For me, music's my life, man. And if you listen to my radio show, as you pointed out, BBC Six Music, there's always something that gets me out of bed. So music is still the driving force in Don Letts' life. That's why I still enjoy DJing, because I'm turning people on with my culture. And that's how we become closer, by understanding our differences, not by trying to be the same. Damn, you've got me there. You've actually got me. What's turning me on? South Park still turns me on.
Hey, and then maybe the part where you were saying if I like the music, I go for this. But then it happened to be the case that it was not only putting you on, it was putting a lot of other people on. People that
Yeah,
perhaps...
you know what it is? Yeah, hey, you know what it is? It's all about taste. Lucky I've got some.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this was IMPAKT TV. No, let's...
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah. No, it's hard. It's funny when you ask me to kind of rationalize the things that I do intuitively, I get confused. Because, especially as I'm getting older, I mean, when you're young, you think everything's like this or that. And as I've got older, I've got more confused. So all I can do is keep chasing those things that turn me on and hope that they resonate with other people. And it's funny because through doing this book and this film, I've come to understand that, yeah, it's given my work some kind of meaning. Does that make any sense? Because other than that, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm trying to have a good time and earn a buck. And hold my head up, man.
Okay, so
but
then...
I don't actually understand. You know what's funny is I don't understand what the fuss is about. Even the film, I don't understand. They use these, they say countercultural, rebel and legend. And, when I'm sitting at home, I don't feel like that person. I'm just trying to hustle my shit like everybody else,
Let's get back to perhaps the role of technology. As you were saying, in the early days of the Roxy, there just wasn't a stage for punk to be played on a stage. And it happened to be a place where different subcultures were meeting to form this new youth movement. And now, looking at technology, of course, it enables us to very much identify with those people around us that like the same, because it is so easily clickable on the internet, and you don't encounter a lot of new things all the time. And I know you jokingly said something about censorship, but what is that place in culture where actually, I'm going to use this difficult word, cross-fertilization would be happening still? What is the place where...
I don't know, listen, subcultures, don't get me wrong, I'd be naive to say that subculture is dead. It just doesn't look as good as it used to. Obviously, there's people that are benefiting from the potential of technology that's enabled us to communicate with people and all this stuff. Not everybody's distracted by bullshit, So yeah, subculture, I think it just looks different. In the 21st century in the UK, it's much more important for people to get their heads together than their hair do. So, yeah, like I say, it's not the subcultural movements maybe are not as obvious as they used to be. In the 70s, you had the Mohawks and you had all these obvious things that were kind of dressing to the ideology. But now I think because money's so tight, people have to focus on the substance and the ideology. Does that make any sense? Yeah, I don't think people have got time to waste on £60 T-shirts. It's hard for young people now. In the UK, a lot of young people are living with their parents till they're 30 and 40, and this is having a dramatic impact on the quality of the art that's being produced. Like I said, I can't speak about what's going on in your place, but I know it's happening here. It's hard to be a rebel if you're living with your mother,
Well, sometimes.
Then perhaps
no,
another...
I empathize with the youth. In my day, you could find a way to kind of operate, flowers could grow out of the cracks in a pavement. But the digital age has kind of made that so much, it's almost like what the digital age has given on one hand, it's taken away with the other.
Yeah.
So it's hard for young people.
And then perhaps an extra addition to that one part where, let's say, before the explosion of technology, there would be local scenes, right? Because there wasn't the global outreach that you can now have via technology. And as you were saying, there was a lot of following up of different subcultures in the UK. And I think this is a good moment to actually have a look at one of these moments from one of your movies where you're introducing two-tone. I'm looking at our technician. We can have the clip.
Very short clip.
In 1979, Jimmy walked away from a scene that was becoming increasingly toxic. And from where I'm standing, the Sham 69 story is a real tragedy. Because whether I like the music or not, he definitely made a connection to youth that felt ignored and rejected, something I could certainly relate to. and they wouldn't be the last band to feel the pressure of having a skinhead following.
One step beyond.
The birth of two-tone and the ska explosion in England, which was really this merger of, let's say, white and black culture, if I may say it so blunt.
Yeah, it was before. You know what people don't realize, that before the punky-reggae party, the first skinhead movement, and it's very important that people understand, I'm talking about the fashion version, not the fascist version that came along in the early 70s. Initially, it was a combination of white working class kids with Jamaican culture. You know, that's how the thing started.
And then now, as you were saying before, it's hard to get to this culture of, had this sense of belonging in a certain subculture, as you are distracted so easily. Would it be possible for even a new two-tone explosion in this age? Because as we said earlier in the beginning,
I think those style-driven subcultures that were so prevalent in the last half of the 20th century, they've had their day. Because of the economic climate of the 21st century that I just explained. You know, like I said, people can't afford to have those luxuries that we did. Having said that, you know, the idea that counterculture is dead is ridiculous. It's just taken on a different form. You know, I mean, how else did, you know, the Black Lives Matter thing become so huge if it wasn't for technology? That wasn't word of mouth. You know, so it's there when people need it and they know how to use it. And I'm very aware that you have a lot of alternative groups now that have been able to find each other through, you know, technology. So I go back to that thing I was saying, technology ain't the problem, it's how people use it. And some people, fortunately, know how to do that.
Yeah, because especially, I mean, with a lot of this movement, especially when they spread through social media, for instance, is that the line is very thin between the more rebellious or movement for social justice and then everyone putting the black post on their Instagram feed because everyone is doing it. So there is a very...
things in the 21st century, things are too serious. You need to get proactive. The swipes and the posts, that ain't going to cut it. You know, maybe voting will. You know, I mean, you know, I don't know. In the UK, again, I ain't sure what that's worth anymore because the two parties are so similar. But, yeah, the swipes and the likes, it's all too easy, man. You need to get proactive, especially for young people, because they're the ones who are going to get screwed by their complacency. And again, that's how Brexit happened. Yeah. You know, the young people took their eye off the ball. They thought it wasn't going to affect them, and it's going to bite them in the arse, because the people that voted for it are all going to be dead when that shit kicks in. Trust me.
Yeah. So voting, what are other ways to be proactive?
Listen, I mean,
that's a start.
You know, even that.
What are other ways?
Now you're asking, I mean, I don't know, man. Listen, I ain't that clever. All I know is that the means are out there for young people. If they got something to say and they got something to do, they can get it done now. In my day, I had to, like I say, ask somebody else and ask for money and go. So there's not a lot of reasons for excuses. What we need is action. You know, I'm 66 years old. I ain't a street fighting man. I'm a sofa fighting man. I've kind of done my bit as far as I'm concerned, and all I can do is push from the back. But I take strength from the fact that I do see that young people are getting proactive. They're not all, you know, preoccupied with, you know, getting swipes and likes. You know, look at Black Lives Matter. That was a great example of how people can get involved and get off their asses and get things changed, because they actually change shit in America. Yeah. You know, and all we got to do is make sure that those things aren't just moments, that they do become genuine movements, you know, and have some longevity and people see them through, and it's not just the calling card for the week or the slogan for the week. We need staying power.
With all the risks of that, because very often with movement at the beginning, there is a lot of rebellion, and the longer they get, the more mainstream, institutionalized, more less dangerous, or yeah, I don't know how to explain it.
It's the same with counterculture. Very soon it gets co-opted by the mainstream, and then the youth have to reclaim it, and that's in fact what drove that turnover of different subcultures in the 20th century. Is because it kept being co-opted, and counterculture in the 21st century. Sometimes I think the only counterculture in the 21st century is over the counterculture. People buying shit.
Yeah. Hey, and when you talk about reclaiming,
no, you know what? No, it's funny. The counterculture thing. I was seeing somebody the other day. What did they say? A big problem in the 21st century. Another one that I've identified is the aspirations of a lot of people. Because in my day, and this sounds really naive, I mean, we got into these things because we thought they were anti-establishment, and that's what we wanted. But in the 21st century, a lot of people have got into this world to be part of the establishment. And I think that's a major shift in the dynamics. And that's why, people are getting away with a lot of shit, basically. People, if you want to be on the red carpet, and if you want to be, I don't know, the MTV Video Awards and all this, I don't know how radical you can be. I think, maybe the only way forward in the 21st century is to have new values. Because the minute you say, okay, I don't want any of that stuff, I think the world becomes a really exciting place again. You understand? Yeah, that's what I was trying to think. I think it's hard to fight an enemy that's occupied your mind. I don't know if you can relate that to what I'm saying. But if you want what the man's offering, you're kind of screwed. You really have to say, fuck that, I'll find my own way. And then the world's a really exciting place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But maybe because of this all-encompassing technology, it also feels that the establishment got also it's much more difficult to be outside or against or stepping outside of it when you're surrounded everywhere by it, through the media, through the image culture, to music.
I know it's funny, you keep saying this it thing, this technology is like this third party, this third entity, which I guess it is in a weird way. But it's only brought out what's in the human condition themselves. Do you understand? It's revealed us for what we are. That's what I'm saying. Like I keep saying, technology ain't a problem. Inherently, it's sort of brought out the inherent problems within mankind. And I know we're getting kind of deep, but that's the reality. Really.
Yeah, I know, absolutely.
We're offered all these choices, and look what we do with it,
Yeah.
And we got to keep offloading the blame on other people, man. We got to look at our part in this whole dynamic. How else did things get so messy? We took our eye off the fucking ball. Sorry. But I don't like
we don't say ball a lot in this television shows, actually. We don't say ball a lot on this IMPAKT TV shows.
No, listen, you're in Netherlands. I know you guys are here.
Hey, and then to get back to the do-it-yourself ethos, and now perhaps if you say that the do-it-yourself has perhaps resulted in a lot of people willing to be in the establishment rather than fighting the establishment, wouldn't it be good if we would replace the do-it-yourself with a do-it-together? And how would that look like?
Good one. I like that. I guess you can't do it together until you've got yourself together as an individual, but good call. I mean, back then, there did seem to be a bit more of a we thing going on, and in the 21st century, it's definitely about me. And again, you just pointed out another major problem. Everybody wants to be the star. And I've always been about the collective experience, man. It's like all of us or none of us kind of thing. And going back to Brexit, thinking, okay, you can have this island and we'll all be cool. Listen, if everybody ain't cool, we're going to come and take your shit. Do you understand what I'm getting at? The island, there's this kind of English mentality, island mentality, where they think they can put up a wall around this island and everyone can go to hell. Ain't going to happen. It's all of us or none of us. We're in this thing together, as you rightly pointed out.
And that
do it together.
This thing together, because I think we got to this part in the conversation where we say there is shit out there, we need to get our act together, we need to do it together. And then you say, I can help push from the back. And you can help push from the back by bringing those things that are actually energizing you, whether that be music or films. And now perhaps, as we also said in our introduction, what would be...
Hold up a second. It's funny that you make it sound like I've got some goal, and I'm just trying to get myself together as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you get older, you're supposed to get wiser, but that didn't really work out for me. I've got to be honest, I'm even more confused than ever. But I do realize that I've had a really good run. I'm 66 years old, and I ain't so... Oh, this is going to sound really bad because I got kids. But what am I trying to say without
coming now.
I'm really selfish? Hey, all I'm saying is to young people, yeah, get your shit together because it's all about you. You know, I've had a really good ride and I ain't dead yet. But yeah, the future don't look too great at the moment. But you do have the power to change things. I do believe that. You know, ultimately, I am an optimist. You know.
Yeah,
and meanwhile, we're also getting some questions from the audience, which is also a good moment to remind everyone that you can ask live questions. So if you're listening and thinking like, oh, I want to have my say in this, we are also getting a question from C. I don't have a full name. Counterculture can be appropriated, that is what we were just talking about, but appropriation can also be countercultural. What are your thoughts on contemporary discourses of cultural appropriation?
Confused. I mean, it's all about whether something is appropriated or appreciated. Because in the creative world, there's an element of appropriation that actually drives things forward. And I think it's down to the individual to work out whether something has just been monetarily appropriated or it's been inspired by it. It's a very confusing thing, that. Reggae didn't come out of a void. The Jamaicans were listening to what the Americans were doing and trying to do their version of it. Rock and roll was a bunch of white guys trying to copy what black people did. So the appropriation thing is a weird one. And it's down to the individual to work out whether it's appropriation, inspiration, or exploitation. Boom.
Yeah. I think that's especially the main difference.
It's always been there,
yeah.
But then perhaps an extra element to, even if you are genuinely interested, we also have this thing called cancel culture these days, where if you perhaps do not explain in all the right terms that other people use why you like this movie or that music, you can be called, but Jesus, you are not supposed to like that because this doesn't fit your culture.
Oh. Is that a question?
No,
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I decided at a very young age that I was not going to be defined by my color. I was just going to be honest about what I liked. And that's why Ariana from the Slits called me the Rebel Dread.
Yeah.
Just being honest, man. If something speaks to you, put your hand up and say yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't even...
What's the big deal?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I also take the opportunity to ask another question that we got from Elisa. Actually, we were talking about protests earlier and about technology and media. So Elisa is asking, do you think public protests will ever fully move into the media environment? Now that we are more and more online, do you think also all these rebelling against things can also happen online or in the media environment?
That's a funny, strange question. I don't understand the question because the voice of dissent rails up very quickly in the media now. I don't understand. I mean, through Twitter and Facebook, you have the pros and I don't understand the question, to be honest. It's already part of the arena. Protest now crosses all the mediums, except maybe the mainstream news. But, we have the alternative media and social platforms out there to counter that. So I don't understand the question, to be quite honest.
So perhaps this is also a public call for Elisa to perhaps refine a question.
Yeah.
And then asking you, Don, you are searching for your music to be placed in your radio shows because it doesn't come to you like, oh, this is a nice tune I would be playing. How do you do your research in media to find the tunes that you love playing?
I keep my ears open And funnily enough, because I've been on the station for 16 years, people send me a lot of things. And I sit there and I spend a lot of time listening. And yeah, I really enjoy that radio show because it allows me to be myself. I don't have to be reggae Don Letts or punk Don Letts. I can just be me. It's probably one of the most honest things I've ever done. And also it keeps me in touch with what's going on now.
And then, what is the song that surprised yourself the most that you put on the radio show over the last 3 shows?
Oh man, you can't ask Don Letts that. If you listen to my show, Father John Misty's new album would probably go, I'm surprised Don likes that. I love Father John Misty. There's only one Father John Misty. His latest album, great. And yeah, I guess if you listen to it in the context of what you'd expect me to, yeah, that'll fulfill your, that's all, yeah. But I could do that till the cows come home.
Yeah.
I'm the Rebel Dread. Whatever you think I am, I'm not.
Okay. Hey, and then for those people that have never listened to your radio show, because we also see this as kind of introduction for other people to dig in your world.
Yeah.
Why would they better listen to your radio show than listen to a television music show?
Oh, easy, because I got taste. I mean, I'm not being funny. The reason you should listen to my radio show as opposed to all the other shit is because you've chosen to speak to me and do this shit.
Yeah.
So there's got to be something. I've got to have something going on, right?
It was Father John Misty that pulled me into the conversation totally right now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Hey, come on.
But you're also asking between a TV and a radio show. So also with your with importance, you also always gave also to images and to video making. It is special to do a radio show and maybe not using also the images or adding images to that.
But
Videos.
music is image. Music lets your mind do the image. It's the best image ever. Every person has their own individual idea of what a song's about. Can't get better than that. When you make a film, it's fixed. A, B, C, D, it's fixed. With music, everybody has their own individual interpretation, and it doesn't get any better. That's why I love music.
Yeah.
Even when I made music videos, I kind of resented the fact that you were locking them down into this one interpretation. That's why a lot of my things are kind of loose. They're kind of open-ended. You know, it's boring to make a song one-dimensional. It should be able to speak to everybody in their own way.
So then perhaps,
says the man who made 350 music videos.
Exactly. So then perhaps looking now at what has been the curve of this conversation, and we're trying to find this red line where you are talking about cut the crap, get to the core, and if this is interesting for you, just dig in and really ensure that you know what you're talking about. Would then the radio show also be so pleasant for you because it is cutting all the crap of the imagery and the stories about the songs, and you're just playing the good music?
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny. If the BBC would let me, I wouldn't even speak, because in my various capacities, I do a lot of goddamn talking, man. And yeah, it's really great to be able to shut the fuck up and let the music do it instead. But I wouldn't. Anyway, no. I guess if I just played back-to-back music, that would be a playlist, wouldn't it? And they wouldn't want to pay me for that. It would be a damn good playlist, though.
Yeah. Well, you can still propose, of course, to BBC Six. I don't know whether they're ever going to see this, but then it might be a good idea. You never know. So if there would be a song that for you would be describing perhaps...
This is a question for 10-year-olds, but go on.
For 10-year-olds? No. Question would be, if you would play a song now, trying to capture what we've been talking about, what would it be that you would be putting on?
The Clash, Know You're Right.
Yeah? Bombs. Okay.
Clash, Know You're Right.
It would be fantastic if somebody here in the technical studio could look up that song, and we might actually be able to conclude our conversation with that song coming on.
Who knows? Let's see. Maybe it comes on in a little.
Yeah, no, it could be. This is all live. So then, and this might be just an embarrassing question too, Don, but when you agreed on being in the show, what was the question that you actually expected and that has not been asked?
I don't expect shit. I quite like being caught off guard, you know, and I like being stumped, because invariably when you're in this situation, a lot of questions you've been asked a million times, and I don't like just repeating shit like a robot. So I like when people, catch me off guard and keep me on my toes and make me examine my own bullshit. And did you do that today? There was something you stumped me with. I can't remember what it was.
It must have been the bumper of IMPAKT TV.
You know what's weird? You know what's weird is? It's hard to, I'm just a dude, and it's hard to kind of be on all the time and have the right answer. I don't know what's going on. I have a view on shit, and it's not necessarily always right. But I'm aware of when you do these things, you got to kind of respect the airwaves and kind of, like I say, justify the space you occupied. So I don't like to take it for granted, is what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm anal like that. Yeah, that's it.
Do you think we can listen to the song a little bit?
You know what's funny is earlier today, the reason I called the song up so quickly is I've just been doing some promotion for the Clash, their album Combat Rock. It's the 40th anniversary.
Nice.
So,
there you go. Cool.
Here we are.
Wow.
Technology.
Could immediately
One of the good sides of technology.
Well, exactly. See, when you've got a good idea and the motivation, boom.
So perhaps this is the moment we thank Don Letts for being with us, and we thank our viewers for being with us too. Don Letts, it's been a pleasure.
I hope you got some sense out of that. It's been a long day. I'm currently on tour with a band called UB40, and I got back 2 this morning, and I'm leaving again tomorrow. So yeah, like I said, I hope you got some sense out of that.
Absolutely. And we thank you so much for your time, even though you had a very long day, for sure. And thank everybody for watching, for asking your questions, for being with us. And as a last, I wanted to point out what's the next. Our next episode is with Zach Blass. We will talk with him about the politics of Silicon Valley, big tech, artificial intelligence and data, and how those are never neutral. So 2nd of June. What you're
talking about.
Exactly. 2nd of June. Save the date, and we hope to see you then. Thank you so much for watching.
Don, we expect you too on the 2nd of June. All right?
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Bye. Over and out.